All right, so the day is finally upon us. CitizenCon / the anniversary sale. Usually this is my busiest time of year, and it's definitely going to be again, because those of you who don't know, I do a video just about for every day of CitizenCon when I go through the ships that are in the different groupings, and I say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, these are the, for the ships of the manufacturer or manufacturers, in some cases, of the day. And of course we have CitizenCon coming up, and that is going to be filled with a lot of news and announcements and probably some really slick looking trailers. But for me personally, what I want to get out of CitizenCon is something different. I mainly I appreciate a good trailer as much as the next guy, but I want to hear Tony Zurvek talk. I want to hear them talk about persistence. I want to hear them talk about server-side object container streaming, or SOCs. And I want to hear them talk about server meshing. That's pretty much it. Because to me, those are, as they said, they are the three pillars of Star Citizen. Those are, in my mind, the most important thing right now. If you can nail down those things, we kind of get to a point where, on the one hand, persistence means that gameplay matters, right? Persistence means gameplay matters. What you do, the missions you accomplish, the rewards that you earn are yours. They're not going to be reset. They're not going to be taken away from you. Now, we do have a little bit of persistence. You can earn a pirate caterpillar, and guess what? You still have that pirate caterpillar after you've earned it and bought it. But you have to do something in the game to trigger that reward. So there is just a little tiny bit of it, but the permanence of rewards, the permanence of a form of progression adds meaning to gameplay, adds value to what you're doing. And so to me, that is one of the most important things, because if we can get to a point where the game can now allow us to progress, even in the most basic ways, that adds value to the gameplay. That means, okay, this is now worthwhile. This is no longer just a fun exercise to play with new toys. This now has a purpose. Server-side object container streaming is a different animal, but I think something that is just as important, obviously. With server-side object container streaming in place, we can now have systems in the game that it's a foundational part of the game. Once it's in, once it functions, and now we have a game that can function, where it's not just an ever-escalating amount of RAM that you need to run the game, because it has to load everything, and now can load what it needs to load for that particular user. Once we get to that point, once we have that system in place, as we have heard, there are many systems that are dependent on that being in place, because we could build hacking into the game, but server-side object container streaming would break it until it was built on top of server-side object container on top of SOCs. That's why we use acronyms. Once SOCs is in place, then we can build the systems on top of that make these systems work, and they're no longer a case of just cobbling things together and just saying, okay, just do whatever you got to do to basically make them function. Now it's something that is in place that we can build upon, that we can truly build upon for the game's future. And it's no longer work that's being done that essentially, much like our progression in the game, much like whatever money we earn, is eventually going to just be erased when the next version comes out and, oh crap, this is broken. Now we have to kind of do that work to a certain degree all over again. So that is one of the three most important things. Server meshing, I would say to a lesser extent is important, but certainly the ability to group up on the fly with players and to no longer be limited to, oh crap man, there's 50 guys on my server, sorry guys, you can't jump in and play with me, that sort of thing. If you're playing with an org, you may run into that problem where you try to get a whole bunch of people together in the game. you all get in, then one person gets disconnected or crashes or whatever, and then can't get back in the server because there's 50 out of 50 on the server. Server meshing allows you to kind of fluidly move that group from server to server, as far as I understand it, without being necessarily nailed down to, oh, well, I guess I just got to keep clicking join until I get in. It one of the benefits of it is it allows you to move between instances of the game. Once you have those three things in place, I think that you can kind of sit back and you can actually not only develop, the pieces of our careers, like salvaging, medical gameplay, things like that, and not worry about them being constantly broken whenever you bring out a new version of the game, but all the gameplay that we kind of engage in now has a purpose, and CIG is now in a position where even if they wanted to create a whole crapload of simple text-based missions, which, by the way, I would be totally okay with. I would be fine with that. If there was all kinds of missions, they said, listen, we don't have time to do a lot of video capture. We may do that in the future. We don't have a lot of time to do a lot of recordings. It's going to cost more money to bring in actors to do the voices, blah, 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 blah. I'll do one for free if you offer. Then if we get all of that, if we can start getting all that stuff into the game, then there are going to be things that are going to be off on the horizon that we're going to have to wait for. But I think that if you get to a place where the game is now persistent and SOX is there, so you can build systems on top of that, and server meshing allows people to form groups and move to wherever that group can be accommodated so that they can play together. Once you get to that point, I think people are going to enjoy playing the game a lot more. And yeah, there are going to be bugs, there are going to be crashes, there are going to be disconnects, but I think overall people will find that their gameplay has a forward momentum, that it's going somewhere. And so I think that this sort of angst, this sort of fear that, oh man, when is this going to get done? If I buy this ship, when is it, is it ever going to be completed? Blah, 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 blah. A lot of that will lessen to a certain degree. I think people will be a lot more comfortable just saying, okay, now I can actually spend time in the game without that effort, without that gameplay. It's kind of being more or less thrown away every 3 months or less than that. I mean, to me, those are the most important things for Star Citizen right now. Sure, I'd love to talk about spaceships. I'd love to talk about gameplay elements. I would love to talk about control interfaces and things like that, but to me, those are the most important things right now facing Star Citizen. To be perfectly honest, like, I have played so many early access games, and I've been extremely tolerant of a lot of games that have had issues in the past. I was extremely tolerant of the game Worlds Adrift, and it had a lot of issues before it was kind of, shit-canned. But it was an enjoyable game. It was a very enjoyable game, and there was a future to that game. It was very unfortunate the path that the developers took in the end. I mean, most of the fixes for the game that players have been clamoring for over a year only came in the final patch after the game had basically kind of run its hype course and had lost its momentum, while other less important things were being pushed into the game. I think that if you can deliver a decent gameplay experience with the promise of nothing but improvements in the future, hopefully, though I mean, obviously there's going to be issues, but if you can show a strong forward path and you can give players the sense that logging into the game is worthwhile, that it has meaning, that there are benefits to it, then I think that you're going to find a lot more players a lot more comfortable spending time in the game. And once they kind of feel that that they're not just sitting there on the bench waiting for it to have meaning, to have purpose, then they're going to be a lot more understanding of things taking longer because you need to do them right, or sometimes maybe something didn't work out at all and you need to kind of step back and say, okay, this system isn't working. We need to kind of do a page one rewrite on this, and we hope you guys understand. I think you'll find that people are going to be a lot more understanding in those situations. I mean, to be perfectly honest, if salvaging came out tomorrow, and all it was a basic like blue beam that shot out of the front of my reclaimer, and the ship just like the wreck just slowly kind of faded out as parts and scrap metal were magically transported into my cargo hold. If they came out with salvage like that, and all I had to do was lock onto a wreck and activate my tractor beam, the claw didn't work or anything like that on my reclaimer, but that, and they just said phase 1, you know, this is just the very first tier 0 implementation of that in the game, I would be okay with that. I mean, obviously I would want it to improve. I want to use the claw. I'd like to see the robot arms animating and all that sort of stuff. But I'd be a lot more understanding in that situation, because I would look at it and say, okay, it works, nowhere to go but up. I'm happy with that. And so, like, those are the things that I want to hear the most about. I mean, if I had a choice, if someone could, you know, sit there and say, you can watch the entirety of Squadron 42 gameplay, you would have exclusive access, and you could see how the whole thing plays out, or you can listen to Tony Zurvek talk about the future of the game for an hour and a half, I'd pick Tony Zurvek every time. And yeah, everyone knows that I'm not really all that interested in Squadron 42 anyway, but I mean, hands down, I want to know where the game is going. I want to know where the progress is. I want to know where the bottlenecks are, and I want to know, you know, I want a realistic prognosis of when certain elements of the game are going to be finished, and because those are, to me, those are the most important things. With these elements, I think we get to a place where it's no longer we're sitting here and we're talking about what if they did this, what if they did that. We're now at a point where we have a firm footing from which we can, you know, start to climb, from which we can actually start to go somewhere. In the end, a lot of the things that we talk about, until we have these things, are all theoretical. It could be this, it could be that. We could have this, we could have that, but we don't know what is and what isn't possible until we have these things in the game. We may find out that certain things that we expect may not be possible or may be extremely difficult to do, but these elements, I think, are key to anything of meaning really existing in the game. These are the most important things, to me at least, in my opinion. These are the most important things to the future, and that, I mean, that is kind of what I'm looking forward to at CitizenCon. It's not flashy trailers, it's not new skins on guns, it's not new armor sets and stuff like that. All that stuff is well and good, but if there's no game to put them in, then what's the point? My main focus is going to be on hearing about these things. Now, I'm not going to be disappointed if there are any of those things in here. I mean, obviously, not everyone who works at CIG is a programmer. Some of them are artists, and some of them are working on different projects and things that they can do while they wait for these other things to be finished. That's all well and good, but to me, the most important part of CitizenCon is when they're going to be talking about these technical elements of the game, because that's when we're going to, you know, find out, or hopefully get a better idea of when these things are going to be completed. I understand why a lot of people were, you know, disappointed that server-side object container streaming, or, you know, OCS as it was originally called, I believe, was, you know, delayed. I know why a lot of people were disappointed, because it really is kind of the foundation of taking this from being an interesting demo into a really viable game, a commercial product that can exist and survive. So that, yeah, is pretty much what I am most excited for at CitizenCon this year. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy the show, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.